I still can't decide which part of this entire situation hurts the most. The sense of betrayal I feel from Joe, the shock of losing a job I'd devoted years to, or the agonizing shame that my past, which I'd fought so hard to overcome, just blew up in my face. I guess I'll start at the beginning, back when I honestly thought my life was more or less on track. I was happily married for 12 years to a man I truly believed was my soulmate. His name was Michael, and he was my rock. Loving, supportive, funny. I used to marvel at how lucky I was to have found him. We married in our early 20s, lived in a cozy home, and considered starting a family. But about 2 years ago, right before the COVID pandemic took off, he died in a car accident. The shock of that loss still feels fresh sometimes, like it was yesterday. I think I stumbled through that first year and a half in a daze, half expecting him to walk through the door. The pandemic only intensified my isolation and my grief. Eventually, though, I reached a point where I realized I had to at least try to rejoin the living. I still loved Michael, but I was only 34 when he passed, and I kept thinking he would hate to see me so shut off from the world. So, after a long period of self imposed solitude, I started going on dates here and there. Nothing serious at first. A coffee date I found on some app, a meetup at a bookstore, random introductions from well meaning friends. None of it really clicked. Sometimes I worried I'd never be able to open my heart to anyone new. That all changed this past fall. I work at a pretty big company. Thousands of employees, sprawling buildings, an on site gym, the works. I started using the gym facilities to de stress after hours. That's where I met Joe. He was 37, friendly, and we bonded over the fact that we both liked to work out after the office quieted down. Initially, it was just casual conversation. What do you do in your department? Or, seen any good shows lately? Then we discovered we had a few niche interests in common. We found ourselves chatting longer and longer after workouts, to the point that one day he asked if I wanted to grab a quick lunch. I agreed, and we ended up having a surprisingly easy, comfortable conversation that stretched well beyond our break time. It turned out he worked in a completely different department from mine. No overlap in our duties, no shared projects, not even the same chain of command, so we never ran into each other except at the gym. That felt safe to me. I wasn't thrilled about the idea of dating a coworker in general, but because of our distinct roles, I figured it was manageable. Over the course of a few weeks, lunches turned into dinner, and dinner turned into nights out. We ended up settling on what we called committed casual. It was monogamous in the sense that we weren't seeing other people, but we both acknowledged a looming expiration date. Joe was planning to relocate across the country to another branch of our company in the summer. Ha! We agreed to enjoy each other's company without any big expectations for the future. At first, I found that arrangement perfect. I was still carrying so much grief for Michael that the idea of wedding bells with someone else felt overwhelming. Joe seemed to understand that, maybe because he was pretty career focused and didn't want to think about settling down either. The dynamic worked. I felt not exactly healed, but alive again, in a way I hadn't since losing my husband. We were having fun, traveling for weekend getaways, exploring local spots. For the first time in a long time, I felt something close to happiness. But maybe a week ago, everything's a blur, but I think it was about a week, Joe dropped a bombshell on me. Over dinner at my place, he confessed he was starting to have stronger feelings. We'd kept it casual, but now he wanted to see if we could explore something deeper. I felt a flutter of hope, if I'm honest. I'd grown fonder of him than I anticipated, and the idea of taking this relationship more seriously didn't scare me anymore. Not like it did before. So I told him the truth. I'm feeling the same way. But if we're going to move beyond casual, I need to share something about my past that might be a deal breaker. He seemed curious but relaxed, and I foolishly thought that was a good sign. I took a deep breath and explained as best I could that I had a terrible childhood. Both my parents were alcoholics and drug addicts. I'd thrown myself into school just to survive, managing to graduate high school early and secure a full scholarship to college at 16. Then came the part I always hate talking about. I told Joe how, when I got to college, I was under 18, didn't have a reliable source of income, couldn't even get the on campus jobs I applied for because I was a minor. I was desperate. A divorced man in his 40s, the father of one of my classmates, noticed and offered me help. He started off buying me basic necessities: food, clothes, school supplies. I thought he was just being kind to a kid who had no support system, but I see now he groomed me. He gave me a place to crash when I needed to get away from dorm life, helped me with my coursework, acted like a mentor. Eventually, it became a sugar daddy type situation. By the time it turned sexual, I was 16 going on 17, which was technically legal in that state, but still deeply messed up. The relationship lasted about a year until I turned 18. He never bought me expensive luxuries, just enough to keep me afloat. $20 or $40 here and there, groceries, a winter coat, all under the guise of helping. Once I was legally an adult, we both agreed it was over, and I got legitimate part time jobs on campus to support myself. I never repeated anything like it. I wasn't an escort with multiple clients or anything like that. It was one relationship with one older man. But yeah, it was transactional. He gave me money and necessities, and he used me for sex. I never spoke to him again after I turned 18. I met my late husband at 20, and I told him everything. He accepted me for who I was, never judged me. Being with him was the first time I felt genuine love without that layer of transactional shame. Sitting there, relaying all this to Joe, my heart pounded. I fully expected he might look at me differently or end things. I told him it was okay if this changed his feelings. I understood. But what I didn't expect was the anger on his face, the disgust in his voice. He called it sex work and said he didn't think he could be with someone who'd done that. He left my apartment shortly afterward. I spent the weekend nursing my embarrassment and heartbreak, reminding myself I'd done the right thing by being honest. A day or two later, I found out Joe had gone to HR at our company. He told them I was a former prostitute and demanded they discipline me for my past. When I heard, I actually laughed bitterly because it sounded so absurd. It was 20 years ago, for one thing, and also I was under 18. Plus, what does any of that have to do with my current job? But apparently, the HR department disagreed. They called me in for a meeting. I was so anxious I could barely sleep the night before. I kept imagining the worst case scenario: them marching me out of the building in shame or plastering my teenage mistakes all over some corporate memo. By that point, I'd gotten an attorney, someone recommended by a friend who accompanied me to the meeting. He advised me to remain calm, not say too much beyond the facts. Sure enough, the HR manager presented me with a written statement indicating that because of my questionable moral history and the possibility that it might bring scandal to the company if it ever got out, they had decided to terminate my employment for cause. I remember literally feeling my mouth drop open. I asked, "How can you fire me for something that happened 2 decades ago when I was a minor?" They just reiterated the part about protecting the company's reputation. My attorney tried to argue that there's no morality clause in my contract, that this was blatant discrimination. But it didn't matter. Their minds were made up. They handed me a stack of paperwork and informed me I'd receive my final paycheck the following week. No severance, no transition period, nothing. I left that meeting in a state of numb shock. I'd spent years building my career, working hard, and had never had a single disciplinary issue. And now I was effectively fired because of something that happened when I was 16, an exploitative situation that saved me from living on the streets. Even as I type this, my hands are shaking with rage and humiliation. At first, I considered texting Joe, maybe asking him why he did this, why he felt the need to go after my livelihood. But my lawyer cautioned me against any direct contact. And truth be told, I was too angry to be civil. So now I'm stuck processing all of this on my own. I'm furious at him for betraying me in a way I never could have anticipated, but a small voice in my head also wonders if his reaction stems from some deeper sense of shame or fear. Still, that doesn't excuse him tattling to HR like he's punishing me for my past. The next steps aren't entirely clear. My lawyer is exploring whether I can bring a wrongful termination suit against the company. Their justification is flimsy at best. There's no official rule about employees' sexual history. My attorney also wants to investigate if there's a pattern of them penalizing female employees for alleged morality issues while ignoring male employees with skeletons in their closets. It's going to be a long, uphill battle, though. Corporations have big legal teams, and if they want to bury me in paperwork, they can. In the meantime, I'm out of a job. I've saved money over the years. I'm not wealthy, but I have enough to survive for a bit without panicking. Still, it wasn't like I was planning to upend my entire career for a legal fight. The stress alone is wearing me down. My daily routine is now completely gone, and in its place is this swirling sense of dread. Did I do something so unspeakably horrible that I deserve to lose everything over it? For the past few days, my phone has been buzzing with texts from former coworkers, most of them confused about why I suddenly disappeared. Some ask if I quit, some ask if I'm okay. I haven't responded to most of them. I'm not ready to share my humiliating story. Even if I decide to come forward, I'm not sure how I'd phrase it. Yes, HR fired me because they think I might tarnish the company's reputation with my teenage sugar daddy scandal. It sounds so tabloidy. I wonder if Joe's already spreading rumors behind my back. The thought of that makes my stomach churn. I'm also grappling with how to explain any of this to my friends outside the company or to my in-laws who still check in on me ever since Michael passed away. They already worry about me, missing Michael and being lonely. If they find out about this fiasco, it's going to look like my life is spiraling. And in many ways, it feels like it is. But I don't want their pity. I won't lie. There are moments I think I should have just kept my mouth shut. If I'd never told Joe about my teenage experiences, we might still be dating casually and I'd probably still have my job. But then I remind myself that honesty felt necessary if we were moving toward a more serious relationship. My late husband always said that secrets corrode trust. And if we'd gotten more deeply involved without him knowing, I'd be living in constant fear of discovery. Sure, my honesty ended up costing me dearly, but maybe it saved me from even worse heartbreak down the line. For now, I have to believe that I did the right thing by telling the truth, and that the company is dead wrong for firing me over something so personal, so ancient, and so irrelevant to my job performance. I'm trying to keep the faith that the legal system might offer some recourse, even though justice can be a slow and painful process. My attorney is building a case about discrimination. How it's possible men in the company have shady sexual pasts but aren't fired, or how there's no stated morality clause, so they're making up rules to punish me. Whether it'll hold up in court, who knows? I'm also trying to avoid letting my anger consume me. My resentment toward Joe could easily become an obsession, but I know that at the end of the day, he showed me his true colors. He's not someone who had a lapse in judgment. He deliberately took information from my painful childhood and used it to ruin my career. I can't even fathom the kind of mentality that would drive a person to do that. Did he think I was unworthy of basic human decency because of what I went through at 16? Did he feel duped, like I was tainted merchandise? I'll probably never know,